I found a book that cuts through the nonsense to help you do DEI right. I'm going to do a breakdown of it here for you today. I'm Dr. Jonathan. I work with organizations to make them inclusive, and I'm on a mission to help 1 million people like you to make your workplace inclusive. Get your pen and paper ready because we're reviewing DEI Deconstructed, your no-nonsense guide to doing the work and doing it right by Lily Zheng. This is the 4th book that we discussed in our book club in 2023. Make sure you sign up to our newsletter to find out about our next session. I share a lot more than I do on the podcast, and I go into details that you won't find anywhere else. With all that said, let's get to the book. Well, let's talk about the author first. Lily Zheng is a queer Chinese-American, neurodivergent, non-binary trans person. Their pronouns are they and them, and they describe themselves as a diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioner. Their work has been featured in Harvard Business Review, Forbes, the New York Times, and they were named as LinkedIn top voice on racial equity in 2022. Now, I don't normally bring that kind of stuff up, but I have written about their work in the past, and I'll put that in the show notes. This is a celebrated book from a prolific writer who's built a considerable following on social media. The author has a no-nonsense style, which is highlighted in the subtitle of the book. The book pays off, that subtitle. The book balances contemporary challenges with a pragmatic perspective in a snappy, relatable tone, and it really shows in the book. The book itself is divided into 340 pages, 11 chapters, including the introduction and conclusion, and 3 parts that were identified by the author. Part 1 is Foundation. That's chapters 1 to 3. This part of the book establishes the scope of the challenges being discussed. Part 2 is Pillars. This is chapters 5 to 8. This part of the book is concerned with the tactical solutions for the challenges you're experiencing. Part 3 of the book is Toolbox. This is chapter 9. This part of the book draws attention to the practical challenges that practitioners must solve. This book covers a lot, and I mean a lot of material. If you think that what we cover in this review is a mistake for reading the book, then you are truly mistaken. I read these books with a very specific purpose, to share with you, to share with my clients, to develop my own thinking, and much more. What I share here isn't everything I'm thinking, and this is why you should join our book club, because I discuss a lot more there. I'm also grateful for our signature approach because it helps us to get so much value from the book. As a reminder, my intention here is to provide a general review of the book, and in doing so, I'll answer a number of important questions. 1. Why is the book important? 2. Who is this book for? 3. What are the key messages of the book? 4. What are some key takeaways of the book? And 5. Other considerations. So let's get to it. Why is this book important? Like I said, this is a celebrated book by a prolific writer. This is the kind of book that everyone's talking about. People who know nothing about DEI will love it. People seeking to appear knowledgeable about DEI will love it. People working in the DEI space and wanting to improve will love it. My strong opinion is there's not a lot of high quality writing on diversity, equity, inclusion when it comes to LinkedIn. And I'm talking about people who are sharing their own thoughts, not just copying others. Now, without question, Lily Zheng is one of the most prolific writers in my feed. This means I was always going to be interested in this book. This also means the book is well written and it's practical, and this is a rare combination. Who is this book for? The author said, and this is a quote, "You are someone who wants to do DEI right." Now, that can mean anything, but they also said, maybe you're a full-time practitioner, maybe you're an internal employee, maybe you're a mid-level manager. There was a long list of people that you could be. And this also sounds like our audience, but the author gave 4 additional clues, 4 skills that I thought were really useful and you can practice in order to enhance your experience of the book. Personally, I thought that was a better guide for the type of person that this book is meant for. 1 was open-minded. The book presents what the author says are hard words for something that you care deeply about. The author invites you to consider them seriously, and I think you need to be open-minded to do that. 2 is emotional regulation. Now, I think this is rarely discussed. The author says that you might feel strong emotions inspired by the text, and you should be mindful of your emotions and take your time. 3 is criticality. This made me smile. The author invites you to scribble in the margins of the book. That's exactly what I do. I use a highlighter. I write all over these books. But the main thing I liked was this. And this is a quote. "I want you to use your knowledge to engage critically with mine." The author is asking you to think for yourself, which is something we promote here. Frankly, I don't think enough people say that. The fourth thing was graciousness. The author is asking for the audience to extend grace and understanding to them and, in my mind, to others. I really like this one. The author said that this book is not for someone looking for inspiration. And I really like that point. It's a potent distinction. Plenty of books offer inspiration and nothing else. That's not our purpose here. That's not the purpose of this book. Key messages of the book. The central message of the book was accountability. It showed up everywhere. Accountability groups, accountability measures, accountability questions. The author defined accountability as this, and this is a quote: informal and formal mechanisms by which the organization and its leadership are held to task to achieve what they commit to. Accountability was really important. It was deemed effective if it was centered on outcomes, but one of the real reasons it was important is because the author said that accountability leads to trust, and trust is the currency of change. So if you want to change things in your organization, if you want a more inclusive organization, you need to cultivate trust. Accountability is a really important part of that. Now let's be really honest about this. Accountability at work is not a novel concept. It's not brand new, and it doesn't need to be, because the truth is accountability when it comes to DEI is not really common. It's not done very well. It needs to be said. And the author said that best practices for achieving accountability in DEI can be framed as answers to this question. How can you align organizational incentives with achieving DEI goals? This showed up in nearly every chapter, and the central premise in economics is that people respond to incentives, people have a strong response to strong incentives. So if you're thinking about organizational incentives, it means you're thinking about how to get people to behave in a particular way. All really relevant, once again, things that aren't discussed enough. Now for the key takeaways. We've changed the format of this. I've spoken about it at the book club. I've spoken about it a couple of times this year. Have you checked out my 60-second book reviews? In October 2022, I reviewed 30 books in 30 days, and I was using my 60-second book review format. And it was really well received. I covered the questions that you know and love in 60 seconds. Why is this book important? Who is this book for? What are the key messages? What are the key takeaways? Other considerations? People really liked it, and they wanted even more. We already have the book club. That goes into a lot of depth, but people wanted even more than that. So after a bit of market research and engaging with some of the people who were really up for it, we launched the Element of Inclusion Book Insights. Every 2 weeks, I share a book breakdown, not only using our signature format, not only weaving my own insights, but I share some of my personal notes. And I've got a method for that. We call it the 5-4-3-2-1 method. And we know it sounds gimmicky, but it is really, really useful for getting value from a book. We take 5 memorable quotes, 4 relevant stories, 3 practical activities, 2 useful frameworks, and 1 alternative perspective. If you want to check it out, go to premiumbookclub.elementafinclusion.com or check out the show notes. The reason I bring all of this up is because for the key takeaways and other considerations, I'm going to give you 1 quote, 1 story, and 1 activity. So here's the quote: a complete dumpster fire of definitions. I laughed out loud when I read this. I was laughing in the book club when I spoke about this. I thought it was hilarious, but I also thought it was really harsh. The author said that out of all the terms in the DEI acronym, and this is a quote, inclusion is by far my least favorite. Now, I laughed out loud because we are the element of inclusion. My business is called the Element of Inclusion. I talk about inclusion all the time because it's my favorite part of the DEI acronym, and it's also the one that I think everyone can get behind. I laugh because the author provided a list of definitions of inclusion that was wide and varied, and the author said it was a complete dumpster fire of definitions. I laughed because I agreed. I laughed because the author provided definitions of diversity and everything else, but they weren't as wide and varied. Now for me, this is a great example of an author volunteering their bias and then demonstrating it. Now most people don't do it, they're just biased. Most people don't bother. In truth, I think most conversations around DEI are a dumpster fire of definitions. This is why I always repeat what we think here. Diversity is a management approach that recognizes that as individuals, we have differences and there is value in those differences. Inclusion is a systematic business strategy to ensure that everyone shares the same advantages and benefits. Everyone can perform, everyone can belong, everyone can reach their potential. You don't have to agree with these definitions. The point being, you know what I mean and you also know why. This is me volunteering my bias and then demonstrating it. In the book, the author volunteered their bias and then demonstrated it. Now for a quick story. In the book, the author spoke about how an article changed everything for them. I really appreciated that because 14 years ago, a magazine article changed my life. I read an article, it started me on a path to doing a PhD. So I found it really interesting to learn that 7 years ago, an article changed everything for the author. They said, and this is a really nice quote, "Everything about how I approach diversity, equity, and inclusion changed in 2016 when I first read an article in the Harvard Business Review." Now that article was called "Why Diversity Programs Fail" by Frank Dobbin and Alexandra Kalev. Now they've also written a book, by the way, which I've got on my desk. I'm looking at it right now. Maybe we're going to cover that in the future. The authors of that article said that a command and control deployment of hiring tests, diversity programs, grievance processes, they said that they failed. They don't work. It hasn't moved the needle on representation of women and non-white racial groups in the US. The author said that the data was hard to argue with. I like this because it's indicative of the evidence-based inclusion that I encourage you to employ. I also like it because the author took this information and acted on it. Now let's think about this. Information challenged their professional practices. They used this new information, critically evaluated it, and used it to proceed in a way that we are all benefiting from now. It benefited them, it benefited others. This is what I try and get you to do. This is what I do myself. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay to reconsider what you're doing. In fact, I think that's the way forward. When I talk about evidence-based inclusion, I'm not trying to get you to show off or act like you know things that other people don't. I'm trying to get you to make better decisions. I really like this personal story from the author because I feel that the author was role modeling the message of the book, and it's a message that resonates with us. Now it's time for an activity, and I want you to establish expectations of effectiveness. This is a non-obvious takeaway from the book. The author spoke about how difficult it was to find a good DEI practitioner. They described it as an inefficient and convoluted process. They also suggested 3 criteria to assess anyone. We spoke about this in the book club. I want you to apply this to me. I want you to apply this to any experts that you come across. I want you to apply this to anyone who you look up to. And the 3 things are effectiveness, approach, and style. Effectiveness, the author said, it's the ability of a person or a firm to create the outcomes that they say they will. Approach is the methods that they use to achieve the desired outcomes, and the style is the manner in which the approaches are conducted. In the book club, we did a little case study using me as an example, but maybe you should go online, jump on social media, do a little case study on someone else. See if you can establish an expectation of effectiveness from them. And finally, a quick alternative perspective. I like the overall posture and presentation of the book. It did leave you wanting more. I think most people will reach for this as a manual. And even though it contained a lot of the key elements of books from this genre, it addressed them in a way that I found less boring. For example, everyone talks about the history of DEI to the point that I spend very little time reading about it in these books. The author's well read, really well read compared to most authors in this space, and this was indicated by the choice to cite a number of sources that I never encounter people talking about. I'm always looking for a number of sources. No one ever says them. There are a couple that this author brought up. I do think that the third part of the book, chapter 9, could have been removed. I understand why it was included, but I felt that it could have been part of an additional resources selection. It turns out the author has recently announced a sequel to the book based on activities and additional resources. So I suspect it's an expanded version of chapter 9. I don't know if that's true. The author is prolific on social media, so this is something that you could probably find out for yourself. There are other things that I could have talked about in the book. I could have talked about power. I could have discussed the 4 levels of diversity. I could have talked about lots of stuff that was in the book, but I felt a lot of those things you could find elsewhere in some way, shape, or form. So I tried to pick up on the things that I felt were more unique to the author. So let's wrap this up. What are the key messages here? 1. Accountability leads to trust, and trust is the currency of change. 2. When you come across an expert, think about their effectiveness, think about their approach, think about their style. And 3. Be gracious, not just to other people, but to yourself. So what do you think? Can you be gracious with yourself? Get in touch or leave a message. I would love to hear from you. If you've learned something from today's show, then give us a 5-star review and a comment wherever you're listening to the podcast. It helps other people like you to find the show. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.